Hey, how are you doing, everybody? Welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and we're diving back into some fantasy football content here for Week 13 action. We've wrapped up the Sunday slate here for Week 12, and we've got some early waiver wire candidates here to potentially target to add some value, some depth, or some potential lineup contributors to your rosters for this week. Now, full disclosure, things are getting a bit thin out there. It's hard to find some real critical difference makers for teams, but these are the players that I feel have the best shot to make impacts for you, again, after these Sunday games. So, as always, Monday Night Football is still yet to be played here. There could be injuries that pop up after this, but let's dive into the information that we have here currently late on Sunday night. All right, first up, let's talk some running backs here. So I'm going to dive into JaMycal Hasty of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this is my priority reserve pickup for this week, meaning he is a backup player who is currently filling in for an injury that took place to Travis Etienne. Now, he had a foot injury. Coach Doug Peterson did say that he probably could have came back in that game, but was held out for precautionary reasons. So this doesn't necessarily mean that this is the overall top waiver wire pickup, but if you do have Travis Etienne or are incredibly thin at running back and need to take a shot at the dartboard to try and find someone for Week 13, this is a pretty solid option to go about things. Again, there always seems to be, despite what the coaches and the players are saying, I feel like more often than not, the immediate injury news tends to be for non-significant injuries, relatively positive, and then things can take a turn for the worse at practice during the week. So I'm going to stay relatively cautious here in the leagues where I have some bench space with Travis. I might go out there and approach a JaMycal Hasty, see what he can do. He was pretty solid, especially in the receiving game for this team. The running game wasn't overall that effective after Etienne left this contest, but the Jags were able to pull out the win. He is widely available, just owned in 3% of leagues. How about his teammate Zay Jones here at 25%, who's actually had a really underrated season, and I think has some flex lineup utility for this week's matchup. Now, the team has Detroit here in Week 13, and Zay Jones has posted 8+ target games on the season. This week in particular, he was dominant. He went 11 catches on 14 targets for 145 yards and added a 2-point conversion, the go-ahead score against the Ravens for this week. So for Zay Jones, he's a very solid receiver here. It's him, it's Christian Kirk. We saw a little Marvin Jones action in here, but Zay is consistently getting volume in this offense and delivering fantasy points on those opportunities. So if they're coming, there's some floor value here, or at least some floor opportunities. And again, that matchup this week against Detroit is basically a welcome sign for opposing fantasy receivers, as they're tending to allow a lot of points to the opposition at this time. Treylon Burks here owned in 51% of leagues. We've talked about him the last couple of weeks here, maybe even the last few weeks. He's been in these videos in this, kind of pickup discussion for a healthy amount of time now. And that's because this is a rookie player entering into the second half of his rookie season, and we're really waiting for him to make that jump. Now, this week he did get credit for a touchdown. Wasn't really his to score, though. It was more so King Henry's ability to get out in space and rumble. He got that football punched out from behind. Treylon Burks comes in the end zone, scoops that sucker up, and scores 6 points there. Maybe some of you guys got screwed over based on your league settings. I'm not exactly sure how that works across all different formats and platforms, but Treylon, in the leagues that I participate in, though, did get credited for that touchdown. He did add 4 receptions for 70 yards on 6 targets, again showing that he is relatively important to this offense. I would actually argue he is quite important. This is not a high volume passing offense, so even though that seems like kind of minuscule numbers, he is getting the deep shots downfield for this team, and I think he is clearly the best scheme fit for this roster right now. So while he's going to be big play dependent, he had another one this week. He mossed a guy down the middle of the field. He is getting those opportunities, and if those start to come at a more frequent role here and rate, you could be seeing some really nice things for Treylon Burks down the stretch of this season. His fellow draft classmate here, Jameson Williams, is another target of mine. Now, shout out to the 39% of you that have kind of sneakily went under the radar and picked him up. I've actually had him stashed in a lot of leagues where I have multiple IR spaces, or I've just had the good fortune of having teams that haven't had the injury bug, and I've had to, make drops and, transactions to basically, fill in for those blanks there. But Jameson Williams, I have tried to keep my hands on in the places where I can, and this season, 39% of you guys already have a hold of him here entering into Week 13. This is a super explosive weapon with high draft capital investment, and they are insanely excited to get him on this football team. If he gets out there healthy and on the field, now they did start the 21-day window for him, so he could potentially be out here as soon as week 13 against Jacksonville. They have the Vikings, I want to say, in week 14. You could get some really advantageous matchups. Detroit has some good stuff down the stretch here in terms of promoting success for their wide receivers. We all know Amon-Ra St. Brown for the rest of this season is probably and most likely going to be the alpha wide receiver despite playing that slot role. The volume's going to head his direction. He's got more chemistry with Jared Goff, and Williams just hasn't played football because of this ACL. But again, super explosive, can make big plays here, and should be a factor in this offense down the stretch as they look to continue developing their culture for 2023. Kyren Williams here, diving back into the running back position here now at 36% rostership. Kyren is technically not this team's official starter, but what he was in my opinion the last couple of weeks the more utilized and therefore impressive back. Now that comes with a grain of salt and a whole lot of context here, because impressive for this backfield are, taking very low standards into account. This offense has been sputtering, it's struggling, it's an injury-riddled disaster. We don't know if we'll see Cooper Kupp or Matthew Stafford the rest of the season. We just got word this afternoon, Allen Robinson out for the year having foot surgery. So there's a lot to not like about this team, but what you could like about Kyren Williams here is that he led the team in in carries this week with 11. He had 3 receptions as well, 60 total scrimmage yards, and I think he's more so a stash behind Cam Akers than anything else. He could break out here as a rookie for this team, but doesn't have a super large investment into him from the team, so I don't really see an incentive for them to really continue pushing him here, but he is getting more work, and his snap count percentage has been very comparable to that of Cam Akers. So if you're looking for that running back position to be addressed here and looking for someone to have on your bench, he doesn't have a place in lineups at this point in time. But in terms of a widely unowned running back that has some upside and some potential, he's a quality pass catcher. He can be used in this offense, and they need playmakers to step up somewhere in this offense, because right now it is the Bryce Perkins, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee show, and your slew of running backs. So it's not an impressive group to work with here. This is the most injured offense in the league right now, from offensive line down to the bottom. At the end of the day, though, the bottom line is that this is a player with some upside potential, and therefore, like I said, worth stashing in 12-plus man formats. Isaiah McKenzie here at 33% rostership. I love me some Isaiah McKenzie. Now, he's been extremely inconsistent this year. There's been a noticeable drop-off in the slot role from Cole Beasley in the previous seasons to what McKenzie is providing this year, but he flashed his ability this past week, showed some of that dominance in the wide receiver 3 role for Buffalo against a very good matchup in Detroit. And like I said, he's been inconsistent, and we don't know if it's going to be more of the same there, some more frustrating performances from him, or if he'll be able to get on track here and continue to put up some nice volume numbers. He had 10 targets, turned that into 96 yards and a touchdown this week. And like I said, very capable playmaker. He is still in that Cole Beasley slot role. You hope to see more volume here, and as Josh Allen's elbow continues to get healthier and healthier, as those pass numbers continue to ramp up and get back to where they were at, less conservative running of the football and more pushing the football downfield, as we started to see in this Detroit game here after having a couple of down performances. I believe those were Josh Allen's first fantasy performances under 20 points this season, were post that elbow injury being diagnosed. You've got a player here with some potential. So I think he should be rostered in more than 33% of leagues. I apologize. I keep banging my watch on my desk here. But this is a guy that, is more so a flex option than a weekly lineup play. Elijah Moore here, another extremely talented player, probably actually the best football player on the list today besides potentially the ceiling of Jameson Williams, but Elijah Moore is a damn good slot receiver, and he could potentially play some boundary roles here for the Jets. Now, we all know the drama and the debacle with him on this team because of the fact that he essentially came out here and asked for a trade because he wasn't getting enough targets. He was complaining about his chemistry with Zach Wilson. He is insanely talented, a great route runner. He can stretch the field vertically. Like I said, that's, as a slot receiver, that's not something you see in all of the skill sets of those slot athletes because a lot of the time they don't have the same speed as the perimeter guys do. Elijah Moore can bring that to the table. Now, he was a former second-round draft pick last season. They got him the ball a lot last year, and with Mike White kind of inserted and infused into this offense, we'll see how long his starting run with the team lasts here in 2022, but he did dang good against Chicago. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, over 300 yards passing, delivered just 2 targets to Moore, but he had 64 yards and a touchdown. He's got a bottom third defense this week in Minnesota, another advantageous matchup against the pass for opposing fantasy wide receivers. So if they can contribute this performance into the weekly game plan and create a situation where they're designing plays for Elijah Moore, getting him the football in his hands, He's a skilled player. He needs to touch the rock more. Him and Garrett Wilson absolutely annihilated Chicago's back end. This is a matchup where they could do similar things here. And if Mike White can stat good performances, stay in that starting lineup for a few more weeks here, I was going to say the sky's the limit. It's really not, because he's probably the wide receiver 2 in the Jets offense. But at the end of the day, he could develop into a flex-worthy player who has, again, incredible talent. I can't stress that enough here. He is one of the better and more underrated young route runners in the game. And that, speaks volumes to what he can end up doing should his playing time go back up here, because he did lose snaps to Denzel Mims and obviously kind of put some bad juju into the locker room, which kind of spilled over this last week, and therefore his opportunities are starting to swing back in his direction. I'm actually interested to see. I haven't gotten a hold of these numbers yet. They should post them on Monday morning. The snap count percentages for this team in that game. So into our streamers of the week, we've got one quarterback and one defense that I'm targeting for this week's game. Marcus Mariota is my quarterback for this week, playing Pittsburgh in week 13 on a short week. They've got the Colts today when you're watching this, or potentially maybe it's already happened if you're watching this episode on Tuesday, but they've got a, slightly condensed week here with that Monday Night Football game. And for Atlanta and for Marcus Mariota, we know what this team represents. And really the reason that we like Marcus Mariota is not because of his passing, it's because of his legs and his rushing ability. There's going to be pressure on Mariota. He's going to be forced to step up in the pocket, potentially break obviously the tackle box and get out in space and run the football. So you like to see that here. He's owned in just 38% of leagues. A lot of quarterbacks with rushing skills aren't that widely available. So obviously we're going out here trying to take advantage of the situation. The ceiling isn't super high, but the floor is what you're hoping to be high with that rushing contribution. And of course, that's just kind of the read offense this team runs a lot of the time when they're playing from a comfortable distance from their opponent. And then Seattle Seahawks for our defensive ad of the week. They are at 18% rostership, so widely available. Over 80% of leagues can get a hold of them here. And they're playing the Rams this week. Obviously, I talked about it earlier. Bryce Perkins, no Matt Stafford potentially the rest of the year. He's got a neck issue / concussion problem. You've got A-Rob out for the year. Cooper Kupp potentially out for the year. A really beat up and battered offensive line. There's just a lot of opportunities for takeaways, sacks, sloppy plays here. In Seattle right now, they just came off of a terrible performance against the Raiders. Their defense really blew that one for them, but they do have playmakers on their back end, and I do think that they are obviously a talent mismatch for the current state of what Los Angeles' offense is here. So there is some risk. This is a streamer defense in week 13, though, so don't let that fact get too far away from you here. But there you have it. 9 players, 9 assets we're looking to target here on the waiver wire for week 13 fantasy football. As always, if you guys enjoyed, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell on so you're never late for a piece of content. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking with me today. As always, questions, welcome in the comment section below or in the community Discord server. The link to that invitation can be found in the description of today's episode or any video here on the channel. Also, go check out our Week 13 playlist. We're getting that started today, and we've got our Lessons Learned episode out today as well from Week 12. Just basically 10 of our biggest takeaways from the games and things that we're looking to, take away with here as we move into this upcoming Week 13 slate. So, as always, you guys, big stuff ahead here. Just 2 more weeks of regular season fantasy for the majority of us. 3 if you end in Week 18 and have a 3-round playoff schedule format here. So, we're getting to crunch time. The season is winding down very quickly. It's do or die, make or break situational football here. So, all your questions, as I said, welcome in the comment section below. I'll get back to you guys as often as I can here throughout this week. So I appreciate you guys staying with me. That's an insanely long outro today, but I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.